Hello, it's layperson Lisa with a reflection for the readings for the fourth Sunday of Ordinary Time. To him you shall listen. But are we? Or are we allowing the hardness that is in our heart to not do God's will? In today's first reading, we hear about a prophet who is to come, who is to speak the truth, and that prophet is Jesus. And we are called, because of our baptism, we are called to be prophets as well, to speak the truth, to encourage and uplift each other. But are we? Or are we allowing the hardness in our hearts to prevent us from doing this? So where am I not allowing God in because of the hardness in my heart? When I reflect upon this, I think of my wounds of rejection and abandonment that have been healed a bit, but have still caused my heart to harden, have still caused me to react in a quick fashion, to take on an identity of rejection, even though that is not what is intended. And so, how can I more fully let Jesus in? How can I allow him to more fully heal this wound? And it's all about intimacy with him. Allow him to speak the truth to me, to us. Whatever lies are being shouted to us by the devil because of our wounds, Jesus is the healer, and he is the one who speaks the truth. But are we allowing our hardened hearts to hear his voice? So where are you not allowing God in? There could be things that you're wounded from and are still struggling to allow Jesus to heal those things. There could be priorities that maybe are not in alliance with God's will. Maybe there's things that we're putting ahead of going to Mass on Sunday, that we're putting ahead of spending quality time in prayer. And these are allowing our hearts to stay hardened and not allowing Jesus fully in. Where am I putting things above Jesus? I feel like sometimes I want to be the one to do something for God. And sometimes I think maybe I'm not open to accepting, like, okay, this is not what Jesus is calling me to do. This is what I want to do. And so St. Paul, again, he encourages us to, throughout all of his letters, he's always uplifting and encouraging others. It doesn't matter who is talking about Jesus, just that people are talking the truth of Jesus and proclaiming his good news. So as we get into the second reading today, it kind of reminded me of vocation, because it talks about how those who are unmarried, that they're anxious about things of the Lord and how he may please the Lord. And people who are married are anxious about things of the world and how they may please their spouse. And so there's some division. But it's because of vocation. So those who are single, who are unmarried, who we can... So I guess I recently discovered, I was listening to a book, and there's a charism of chastity. And this is a charism for people who are called to be single so that they may be able to be more readily available to do things that God may be calling them to do. So it was kind of like a beautiful affirmation of a recent conversation I was having with someone that I was at the retreat center and I was talking to someone and they may be retiring soon, and I kind of jokingly said like, oh, well then you'll be more available to do things around here. And he said, yeah, but you do a little bit of everything here. And I said, yeah, that's because I don't have any kids and I'm not married. And he goes, well, that's a good thing. So I said, I'm in a unique situation. He goes, yes, it's a very good situation. And it just made me realize that, yes, like God has blessed me with this vocation so that I may be more readily to serve him, and I can give my whole self to him. Where people who have a vocation of marriage, their job is to bring each other to heaven. They are called to help each other be saints. And so, yes, they are called to serve God, but they're also called to bring their spouse with them to heaven. And so we are called to adhere to the Lord. And we are called to adhere to the Lord without distraction for those who have the vocation of being single. And we are called to adhere to the Lord with our spouse, help our spouse adhere to the Lord if we have the vocation of marriage. But we are all called to be holy ones of God, which is what we hear the demons call Jesus. That I know who you are, the Holy One of God. And because of our baptism, we are also holy ones of God. And what does this mean? This means that we are called to be sacred, to be set apart, to be for God. And that is a vocation. That is our vocation as baptized Catholics. That we are called to be set apart, to speak the truth. That we learn in the gospel that Jesus is the message of God. Oh, we learn in the gospel that Jesus is the message. And this refers to the first reading where God tells us through Moses that he is sending a prophet to us, a great prophet. And how do we grow closer to God? How do we grow in intimacy with him? We spend time with him in prayer so that we become more attuned to his voice. And this is something that I find a lot of people are challenged with. Like, oh, I don't feel like God talks to me. But he talks to us through the scripture. He talks to us, like today, in today's reading, the part about the unmarried people, that they have the biggest concern is how to please the Lord. And so that's just an affirmation of what I've been hearing God say to me lately over the past few weeks. And God speaks to us in the scripture. Sometimes I think we kind of speed read the scripture to kind of, oh, I need to get my daily readings in, but we're not allowing them to speak to our heart. We're just allowing them to speak to our mind. Like, oh yeah, I've heard this story before. The scripture before. I could just breeze through it. But yet when we take time with the scripture and see what pops out at us, what word or phrase God is emphasizing on that day, and then asking him, okay, God, how are you calling me to act as a result of what you are bringing to my attention? God speaks to us through nature. He speaks to us through other people. He speaks to us through our pets, through our own voice. And I think that one is the hardest one to really accept. Like, okay, are these my thoughts, or is this something from God? And I find for myself that if it's some random thought, that is from God. He speaks to us through music. He speaks to us through our trials and our sufferings. And sometimes when we're experiencing this, we don't hear the voice of God. But when we look back, we are like, oh, that was where God was telling me to say yes to this. And so one way that we become more attuned with his voice is spending time in silence so that we may hear his truth. When he may soften, we may invite him to soften our hearts. We may answer his invitation to spend quality time with him. When we spend time in this silence, we become more attuned with the quiet whisper. And so I invite you to say yes to this invitation of God to spend time with him so that he may heal, he may surround us in his embrace, that he may heal our wounds that are causing us to have hardened hearts, that he may allow us to be filled with him, that we may be more open to fully receiving him. And so this will help us to listen to him, to have the strength and the courage and the boldness to do whatever he tells us.